What is the fastest loss ever by a world chess champion? I'm Grandmaster Max Illingworth, and I'm going to show you this game in this quick video here. First, let me show you the fastest loss ever by a world champion, even before they became world champion, from a game that was played between Alonso Zapata, playing as white against the world champion Vishy Anand, but this was in the Biel 1988 B tournament, so this is when Anand was already a grandmaster, but not yet a world chess champion. That game went e4, e5, knight f3. Anand played very solid Petrov or Russian game with knight f6. Knight takes e5 was played, d6 kicking back the knight, and then after knight takes f3, knight to f3, and knight takes e4. Zapata played the move knight to c3, and that is an important story to share with this game because it'll teach you a very valuable lesson about the dangers of trusting other opening sources blindly. You see, in this position, what black should do is he should play the move knight takes c3 and double up the white pawns in that way without any loss of time. But instead, Anand had seen this game that was played between two grandmasters, Tony Miles playing as white against Larry Christensen in the San Francisco 987 tournament. And in that game, Christensen played the move bishop to f5. This game actually subsequently appeared in the Chess Informant, which is the big periodical that before the times of strong chess computers and software and strong chess engines, the Chess Informant was kind of the Bible that chess players around the world would use to look at the games and analysis of strong chess players. And in this informant, it showed this game where Miles played this move at knight takes e4, and the game ended in a 20-move draw from there. But what Anand did not know is that this was in fact a pre-arranged draw where the players had agreed the result as being a draw and just played sitting at the board, saying, well, we're just going to make some moves and then we'll agree a draw later. And so what Anand didn't see is that Miles, when playing, actually hovered his finger over to show the move of queen to e2 to Christensen, say, oh, you blundered this and now I can just beat you, but I prearranged the draw already, so I'm not going to punish you for that. But it turns out Zapata was not so forgiving against Anand. And then after the move queen e2 was played, Anand had realized the blunder he had made, and he resigned in this position. So there you have it. That's the fastest ever loss by a world chess champion in a total of 6 moves here. And if you're wondering, well, why is it that Anand resigned? It's because, let's say you tried to defend that knight with a move like d5. White will just play d3 and win the piece with d takes e4. Obviously, you can't take the knight because then queen takes king. But if you play the move queen e7 to try and block the attack that way and block the pin, unfortunately, white has a very strong move here. This is a good moment to pause if you don't see the move yet for white. If you do, great work. The answer is the move knight to d5. And, well, if the queen stays on that e file, there's going to be a knight takes c7 move. But if the queen retreats, now we can play the d3 move we saw before. And again, because of the pin, white just wins a piece absolutely for free at this point. So that's why Anand resigned, and well, it goes to show that you shouldn't just trust an opening source or something you read in a book blindly, but you should use your own better judgment. And if Anand had not just trusted the informant, but had a look for himself, he would have avoided losing this game in 6 moves. But one thing to keep in mind is that you might say, Max, that's not a very fair example. Anand was only a grandmaster, not a world chess champion at that time. So if you want a game with the quickest loss ever by a world champion, either a reigning world champion or a former world champion, well, the record was just broken in a game played today in the Croatia Grand Chess Tour 2021. And this was a game by Shakhriyar Mamedyarov playing as white against his favorite chess player of all time from his childhood years, Garry Kasparov. And if you're wondering, well, Max, didn't Kasparov retire from tournament chess already? Well, that is true. He retired in 2005 on the back of winning the Linares Super Tournament. But he still very occasionally will play these sort of blitz tournaments or rapid tournaments as a kind of to bring some spectators in and this sort of thing. Unfortunately, it didn't really pay off for him because he scored a half point out of 9 games against these other top players. So, of course, not a good result on his part, and definitely, well, not to the caliber that he showed when he was dominating world chess in the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s, where he had a dominance that really was only been seen by probably a few other players in chess history. So that's the reason why in my top 10 chess players of all time, I did rank him as the number 2 greatest player ever in terms of objective playing strength. So let's see how this game went. Mamedyarov played the move d4, and Kasparov went for the Queen's Gambit accepted with c4 and d takes c4. And you may know that I have done some videos on this opening in the past, which you can check out above if you want to learn more about it. In any case, Shak played the move e3, just very simple move to regain the pawn on c4. You guys are probably familiar with the opening trap that they can't play b5 and c6 to try and hang on to the pawn, because you're going to have some tactics that will allow you to win the rook at the end. So that's easy enough. So instead, Kasparov played the move e5, trying to hit back in the center. It's a more aggressive alternative to the usual knight f6, e6, and the more solid approach. And now normally white would play the move bishop takes c4, and after e takes d4, e takes d4. Well, we would have this isolated queen's pawn position, where white has a little lead in development and some chances for an advantage. But Mamedyarov played more creatively with knight to f3, and then after e takes d4, he now played the move bishop takes c4, which is a pawn sacrifice, but not necessarily a permanent pawn sacrifice. A question that you might be asking is, well, what if black simply accepts the bait with d takes e3? But that would actually be a big mistake, because we can see that the black king is defending both the queen and the pawn on f7 at the same time. That means we can overload that queen with the move, or that king rather, with the move bishop f7. Well done if you saw that move from before, where king takes f7 would obviously leave the queen on d8 undefended. But after king e7 and queen to b3, the black king is stuck in a wide open center. White's going to bring the rook pieces in the attack, and it's just going to be completely decisive here. And actually something kind of similar happened in the game, where black played the move of knight to f6. Probably should play a move like bishop b4 and try to disrupt white's normal short castle and fast development if black wants to have equality. But black played move knight f6, and that is actually a blunder. It turns out already the position is winning for Mamedyarov. The question is, what is the move that white should play here? Can you guys find it and get the win against Kasparov? Now, before I show the answer, if you are enjoying this video so far, do certainly give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you are new to my channel. So the idea is not to play e takes d4 or a move like castles, which would give black the time to get his king out of the center. But of course, when your favorite player is Kasparov, you again will end up having a very good feel for the attack and initiative. And with the move queen b3, we see that it's already not so easy for black to defend his pawn on f7 in a good way. In fact, the computer's recommendation is to give up the pawn with bishop c5, but obviously leaving your king stuck in the center is not going to be conducive to having a healthy position. Kasparov played a move queen to e7, which unfortunately doesn't really work either, because white has a very good move in this position. And in fact, this is a position where if you find the right move, then Kasparov is going to resign in response. So are you up to the task? Let's find out. And keep in mind that this was a blitz time control game, so it does mean, of course, if I gave you 10 minutes to solve it, it would not be doing it justice. But okay, well done if you came up with the move castles, where we're just maximizing our lead in development. And because the black king is stuck in the center, it turns out that with threats like knight to g5 just crashing through on here, that black has no good option, and in fact Kasparov resigned. Now you might be wondering, well Max, why couldn't you have played knight g5 immediately? And the reason is that black would have this queen b4 check, and that would allow black to trade the queens and save himself. So it's quite important to castle first, so that queen b4 does not come with a check and you can just crash through on f7. And unfortunately, there isn't really a good defense to this threat of knight to g5. For example, a move like d3 doesn't really help, because you have knight g5 and you are crashing through this pawn. Of course, if you play bishop e6, that doesn't really cut the mustard either, because then that pawn on b7 and by extension the rook on a8 will be left hanging after this. And if you were to play some very greedy move like d takes e3, well, that's kind of just suicidal. Even a move like just rook e1 and just piling up on that e file is super strong. After something like ef2 and king f2, we can see just how that rook on e1 is just completely crashing through, and that black just doesn't really have a defense here. And if they do play something like knight c6, trying to go knight a5 or knight e5, again, just e takes d4, and once more, we see that black has no good answer to the move rook e1, and simply winning something along the e file using that very powerful pin, which shows why it's so important for black to get that king castled as soon as possible when the e file opens. Otherwise, rook e1 is going to be very dastardly. So there you have it. That's my video on how Kasparov lost in just 7 moves in the quickest loss ever by a reigning or a former world champion. I'm actually not sure what is the fastest loss ever by a reigning world champion, but if you guys know, then I'd definitely love to find out what it is in the comments so that I can also learn something new from this video. In any case, it was a pleasure to show you these games, though I know it was not a pleasure for Anand or Kasparov to play them. In any case, thanks so much for watching the video. Do remember to subscribe if you are new to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Get out of here.